Okay, so we're going to do a Pomander tier list for Pilgrim's Traverse, and this is specifically how these palms feel in the context of this deep dungeon. So we're going to do a couple of these first, because some of these palms, they don't really change how good they are in any given dungeon. So Affluence, for example, and Fortune, these are your Pomander generators. I feel like in a big way, learning to use these effectively to keep yourself supplied with resources and to make sure you don't run into resource drought is an important part of not just succeeding in Deep Dungeon, but making your climbs not feel slow. Because if you're sitting on these only until they overcap, you're going to do things like run out of strength, and then the dungeon gets slower, and that just feels bad. So these are great. These palms are great no matter what deep dungeon you're in. I find I don't really change a whole lot about how I use them from dungeon to dungeon. They're just great, fantastic palms. Not much to say. They're good, evergreen. Sight is another one where it doesn't matter what deep dungeon you're in. This thing's great. It sure reveals traps, which is a safety measure, but you know that if you hug walls, you will avoid almost all traps all the time anyway, especially on later floors because there tend to be fewer wall traps. So what Sight really does is it enables you to make plays by revealing landmines, or sometimes you want a luring trap. On rare occasions, there might be something very niche, like you open a mimic and there's a silence trap nearby and you can silence it so that it doesn't pox you. That's way less common, but it's still fun when it happens, and it's something that you can do because of Sight. Sight lets you use traps offensively or for utility, and that's great. It lets you make plays. It saves you time too. If you pop a Sight, you have the key nearby, and you know that the rest of the chests on the floor are bronze, and you don't want to go find them. Who cares? Or maybe the rest of the chests are bronze or silver, and you don't need any more resources. Uh, so that's cool. It's a great palm. It saves you time, lets you make plays. It's gross. Fantastic. Safety, I feel like, is it's sort of a staple. I think in this deep dungeon we could even call it boring, honestly, because we have three ways in this DD to deal with traps. We have sight, we have safety, and we have maze route. And that feels like it's over much. Like, they could almost take safety out of this deep dungeon entirely. Because like what it does is it completely negates one of the negative votive effects, right? Like, if you get the extra traps votive, like, it doesn't really put more traps in the floor. It just makes it so that every floor has, or every room of the next floor has exactly one trap in it, except for the start room. And you can just hit safety and ignore that. I mean, not that hugging walls doesn't do the same thing, but like, what do I use safety for? I would say more or less, I like to use it after I have wiped a floor, like if I had Mud Ball, or if I had Mom Bomb, or if I had Poison Fruit. And then I can just go check chests without having to hug walls. That's kind of what it does. So that's convenient, but it's also boring. Safety doesn't really enable you to make plays in the same way that Sight does, although it can be nice to do to be able to do big pulls and know that you won't step on a trap. So there's that. But yeah, it could be more interesting. I feel like we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of dealing with traps in this DD. So normally I might put this under staple, but I'm putting it under boring now. Another palm that's fantastic at making plays is witching. Witching is amazing because you can use it reactively because you stepped in a luring trap, or you got jumped by a patrol while you're fighting other mobs already. Or it can let you do something proactively, where you can pop a luring trap on purpose and AoE some stuff down. Or you can look at a room and say, or how about this? How many times has this happened? You are in the middle of, you spawn into a room, and there are several patrols coming at you at once. all from all different directions. You hit that witching, you take care of that problem immediately. And not only do you have fewer patrols coming at you now, but you just got a bunch of kills toward the key. Like, witching is just amazing. Um, so it's a great pump. It's fantastic. It's an all-star. Uh, as you learn to use it proactively, it becomes more and more powerful. And learning to use witchings is one of the ways of not just making Deep Dungeon feel like you are clowning on it. Uh, it also just makes your runs better. It makes them feel smoother. It makes them safer. It makes them more effective. So witching is an amazing palm. Uh, about a simple palm, strength. I would say it's not so much fun because killing stuff faster is more fun, but it is a staple just because you're alone. Killing stuff faster is kind of the name of the game. It's necessary, but it's not the most exciting thing in the world to do. Um, I'll put it there. Steel, it's a staple in this DD. It does enable you to do huge pulls, which is great because it makes your floors more efficient. It allows you to survive usually one failed boss mechanic, which is nice. So that's a peace of mind thing. So maybe it is a little better than strength in that regard, but it's not super exciting. Like, you're not usually popping steel and going, "Oh boy." A lot of the time you pop it and you're just like, well, I guess I don't have to heal as much. Especially if you're on the late floors and you're just doing one-on-one pulls or something, then it's like, well, I guess I don't have to heal as often. And that's kind of nice. But using it, I guess it's sort of like witching, right? Where if you are looking into doing big plays, then steel is more exciting. So maybe it deserves to be higher than strength. Let's see. After that, I have a lot of fun with flight. What I like about flight is it is a very forward-thinking palm. Um, and honestly, this is where I feel like old Deep Dungeon design is really smart, because if you know the mobs on the next couple floors are bad, that might be where you put your flights. Like, uh, the floor set 81 to 90 has got a lot of really annoying and obnoxious monsters, right? It's got out of combat casters. It's got uh, the ghosts that cast Dark 2, which is a real fast cast and has real mean snapshot. It's got Humbaba patrols. And so thinning out the number of mobs on the floor and requiring fewer to open the key is amazing. And this is a palm that lets you say, I don't like the things that are upcoming. I'm going to fight as few of them as possible. That feels good. It's a good palm. Flight's a good button. So it feels good to use. It feels good to plan to use. And in my runs, I tend to always put them in the same place. Um, and the only way that flight or affluence can backfire is they do have that small chance of increasing the rates of treasure rooms. So sometimes you pop it and you're expecting a faster floor, but you get a treasure room on the key or something instead, and then you have to maybe use more resources to deal with it. But I do like that is a trade-off. You know, there is a chance that it backfires. So that also makes it fun. I like that the palm is not strictly exclusively positive. And sometimes you do get kind of hosed by it. Like I've had floor sets where I pop this because, you know, the patrol rate's real heavy or something, and I know I want fewer, and then every monster that spawns is a patrol instead. Like I actually had a floor on in the 70s, in 71 to 80, where the only monsters that spawned on it were stone eaters. So it was nothing but patrols. And it was because it was a flighted floor and each room had exactly one monster in it. So that was really funny. Anyway. Um, Gosh. Purity in this dungeon, it is sort of... Honestly, it's... Mimics got so heavily nerfed. I would say Purity used to be a staple. More often than not, just because it's a damage down and it's a dot tick, but the dot tick is so small here relative to our hit point values that it is really more of a pomander you use to get rid of your damage down than it is because, you know, the healing is a problem. Yeah, I don't know if if purity is all that interesting here, it is kind of important if you go into Mudball, because you don't want to have Pox and be a Mudball, because if you go over a landmine, you have no way to auto-heal. So that makes it a bit of a staple. As the Fire Ghost, you can just hug walls, and you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, it's... Honestly, maybe this is a boring Pom in this deep dungeon because Mimics are nerfed. You know, it's not all that exciting. It's kind of needed for Mudball, but otherwise it is on the boring side. Let's see. That brings me to, since we talked about Mimics, Alteration. Love Alteration. Gambling and getting Mimics or Corrigans is amazing. Because it's a soft Pom refill. You know, they have a 50% chance to drop a chest, so sometimes you get 2 Corrigans and both drop a chest. Sometimes you get two Mimics and they don't drop anything. Sometimes you get a Corrigan, they drop chests, and they end up being Mimics. So Alteration is a lot of fun. I also love, in particular, that you have to find the altered room to know what you got. The dungeon doesn't tell you until you scout for it. So that is actually a really interesting gamble. Especially on later sets when you have a higher rate of treasure rooms and you could get a Mimic treasure room. Then you have a problem on your hands, unless you can skip it, or I don't know. Sometimes you can just wipe it. But Alteration is a lot of fun. Fantastic Pom, really, really good for either refilling your Poms or just saving time. And Pox is such a non-issue, who cares? That brings me to Haste. Haste, what a boring Pomander. It's more damage. There's a bit of a nuisance to this, where most jobs were going to appreciate this Pom because it increases their GCD. But some jobs, like Summoner, don't like this very much, because having a faster GCD means you go through your primals faster, which means you have more filler Ruin 3 when you're trying to do like a rotation at a boss, and that feels kind of bad. So not every job actually enjoys this in the same way, I think is the way to put it. But overall, it is just more damage, and it feels a bit underwhelming. It's cool in party runs just because it does affect everybody. I kind of like the idea that it is like Strength or Steel, where it's an 8-minute buff and it goes away. At the same time, it means we don't have Haste as a floor enchantment anymore, and that means we have one less enchantment that can appear, in addition to not getting no abilities, and we also can't get blind. So without those enchantments, and also without Haste, our enchantment pool is very low. That means the enchantment variety that we can get is pretty bland. You know, it's damage down, gloom, no item, HP up, HP down, which HP up and HP down feel very, very irrelevant in this deep dungeon, like almost completely irrelevant. So, you know, I feel like they should have added more debuffs if they're going to take one of the enchantments away and stick it on a Pomander. Speaking of boring Pomanders, how about Intuition? The Horde in this deep dungeon has got some real junk in it. It's really disappointing because it is so heavily weighted toward giving you the sacramental offerings for Quantum, which barely anybody seems to do. A lot of people clear it once and don't want to farm it, so it's hard to find other people to do it, which is really disappointing. So, you know, all those sacramental offerings you're getting from your Horde, I probably have like close to 100 of each by now. I don't have anything to do with them until I can find a Quantum group. And I might not even find a Quantum group that wants to farm it. They might just go for one clear. So, a lot of the stuff you're getting from the Horde is just kind of whatever. They also put some stuff in the Horde that is very questionable, like Pilgrim's potions. Why are they in the Horde when it's so easy to farm potsherds? Like, what is going on there? That, like, they already come from bronze chests as well sometimes. They put the ambient music rolls in there that you can buy from NPCs. Like, why is an NPC item in the Horde? Like, what? Why? You can go to, like, the housing district and just buy some of this stuff. Why is it in the Horde? So, And that's definitely late horde where that's an issue. The horde sacks that should be exciting, that you're risking your run for. Um, yeah, and intuition is just kind of a bust a lot of the time, unless you're farming the horde achievements. Okay, that brings me to purification. This Pomander has so few uses that it being here, it just almost feels like they forgot consumables exist. Like, I carry spine drops and echo drops, man. I don't know why this palm is here. Um, it would be super interesting in some other deep dungeons where there are mobs that have really terrible effects, like really bad dots and other sorts of debuffs. But here, I use it on the gremlins that can put a slow on you. I think I've used it once when I got paralysis from the 80 boss. I think I used it to stop the poison from the Stone Eaters once, just because I had an extra one. Like, for the most part, what I do with this Pomander is I drop it to 1 or 0 when I'm climbing, just so that when I go touch a chest, if it says there's a purification in there, I don't have to smash the Pomander from my inventory and then pick up the next one. It doesn't slow me down when I'm like running through a room, touching a chest, and leaving. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about this palm and how useful it is. It's like, well, I use it frivolously because I don't need to save it for anything important. That brings me to raising, which is an all-star. This, more than anything else, saves your time in your run. It respects your time. It's there for you. It doesn't drop after floor 80, so all the raisings you want to get, you want to make sure you pick up before you go into the last 2 sets. However, the 71 to 80 set does feel like it's usually generous with these if you are hunting for them. I certainly have had runs where I did not find a raising after floor 61, and I just had to do the rest of the run without it. That hasn't led to any duty fails, but I've had other runs where I found like 5 of these on that last set. So I like this palm. I feel like this palm is there because it is encouraging you to have a good time and respect your time. So use it, and don't let a mistake end your prog and send you back to 1. Great palm. Serenity, compared to other deep dungeons, this palm exists to deal with no items or to deal with nuisance floors like when you get low damage and gloom, so damage down gloom. We don't have no ability, we don't have blind, so we don't have the really mean debuff combinations that we can get in the other DDs, which means that Serenity doesn't do a lot and it's so flexible to use here just to get rid of like some nuisance debuffs. So I feel like this palm could have been something else. I feel like really the enchantments should have had some meaner effects, or there should have been some mean votive effects that you can only deal with Serenity. So I think there's a drawing board situation here. Another thing that I thought would have been really cool, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, but in other deep dungeons, it's never been the case that a boss floor can have debuffs on it. But because this deep dungeon is so kind of nice about its debuffs, you can't get especially bad ones. I think it would have made boss fights a lot more interesting if you could have enchantments on those fights, especially if they could only be bad. And yeah, I think that would have been a way of giving Serenity a usage, so that when you go into a boss fight, you're like, oh, what if I get gloom? What if I get gloom damage down at the boss? Then I'm going to use a Serenity. So that would give you another reason to like hold on to these and to actually use them. I think that would have been really interesting, really fun. Plus, sometimes it might be cool to do a boss fight and know that it has gloom and that you're having to like sweat. Like, that'd be a lot of fun. Because generally speaking, most jobs are going to take a boss down within a strength and a steel. and that's even without having to have a fairy helping you. So, you know, if you got damage down, you got Gloom, or you go into the fight with Pox and you got damage down, then, you know, that could really extend the boss encounter, and it could make it so that, you know, you run out of your strength or steel, and you have to decide, oh, do I use a Serenity or not? I would have loved to see enchantments on bosses. That's what I meant. Finally, Devotion. I did not like this Pomander. There's also the standard complaints of it doesn't tell you what it does. It doesn't tell you that the votive you get always gives you the Mom Bomb or the Mud Ball. So that is a little bit annoying. I do like it in a lot of aspects of this game where they have players crowdsource how stuff works, like fishing and field ops. And, you know, we of course crowdsource what the mobs do in Deep Dungeon, but Devotion, having to confer with people to go, oh hey, doesn't this always give you a floor wipe, is a bit silly. I feel like it should have told you that. I feel like the tooltip should have told you that it's not effective on the 8th or 9th floors, or on the 7th floor, or on floor 97 and onward. I feel like there just should be more information. So that could be improved. The other thing is, what I most dislike about the design of this poem is because it always gives you a floor wipe. What it's doing is saying, the 2 floors from now, you have an easy out. Unless you get anti-knockback Mud Ball, in which case you have to sweat a little bit. And let's say that is actually interesting, that there is a counter to Mud Ball. I think that's kind of cool. But I don't think it redeems Devotion, and the reason that I don't like it is, in other Deep Dungeons, when I arrive on a floor, I view the floor as a problem to solve. Like, what is the monster mix on this floor, and what is the enchantment situation? Like, how bad are the debuffs? And especially in Palace in Heaven on High, are there enough things for me to kill to open the key? And if there's not, if I can't kill those enemies in those conditions, then I have to use resources of some kind. And that makes those interesting puzzles to deal with. Devotion just says, screw that, you're going to have a free floor. That's all. Yeah, screw it, you're going to have a free floor. I think the only time I actually turned off the transformation in any run was when I got to the 10th floor 98. I was Mud Ball, it was anti-knockback, and I was just like, nah, I'm just going to untransform, and I'm going to use, I think I had Poison Fruit, so I just nuked the floor, because I didn't want to risk having to, you know, use the Mud Ball 3 or 4 times against certain mobs and, like, damage down Gloom with anti-knockback. That was, I wasn't going to risk my run for that. But, you know, once again, that's a situation where it's like, I can just deal with the situation in another way. So overall, I like it when Poms solve the problem presented to you, and solving a problem that I have not yet seen is just not that interesting. It doesn't feel like Deep Dungeon. So yeah, there's that. Another thing, and this is just a tinfoil hat, it feels like I find these most often on the 8th and 9th floors where I can't use them if I overcap. So maybe that's not borne out by data, and maybe that's just Tilt talking, but it has felt like that. So I don't like Devotion. I don't like the redesign. I don't like how it's designed. I don't like really the votive system. It bums me out, and the reason is, I think that Alteration is an amazing palm because it does something, but you don't know what it is until you look. You have to go find the room. If you use a votive, even if it's not this votive, if you just use a random votive, a candle you find on the floor, it tells you ahead of time what's going to happen. And that means you can flight if you get Gloom, you know, or you can just plan to wipe it with a Poison Fruit. If you get, you know, too many traps, you can remove them, you can view them, you can view them. If you get no map, you can fix that in 2 different ways. So the whole votive system, it I feel like it's too nice to you. Knowing what you're going to get, I also feel like it's way too nice that you get only three bad things, and none of the bad things are something that you have to use a strong resource to counter. Flight is a pretty flexible resource if you get Gloom from a votive. And that's another thing about these palms is they're very strong at dealing with the votives that the bad votive effects. So you know, uh, yeah, I I don't like devotion. I don't like the votive system. I think it's undercooked. Okay. So what do I like? Bark Bomb. I would say, ooh, Bark Bomb is ultimately a pretty. It's a palm that I find very fun on the floors, but it is like super strength basically, right? If you pop a bark bomb on a floor, you don't need to pop a strength because the fairy is just going to help you kill everything super fast, and like that's fun. That feels good, and it has some really nice uses in conjunction with witching to take care of treasure rooms because the fairy is going to help you kill stuff usually within two witchings. On DPS jobs, you might be able to do it within like a one witching if you maybe use strength or something. But overall, what I feel like the design of this palm is for, because of the hit point buff, is that it's a boss killer, and I think that it was designed that way just because the 99 boss exists and has way too many hit points. So yeah, I think it's boring because of the existence of the 99 boss. It's definitely not needed to take care of any of the other bosses. I have, fought those bosses with only strength and steel resources on tanks, on DPS jobs, on healers. When I just didn't want to deal with the boss, I would sometimes use a bark bomb, but it's not needed. But I do feel like it is needed for 99 if you don't want to be there forever. And you can see how long an individual job takes with no buffs if you just go into the do invoke the final verse and fight the boss till it's dead, and it's pretty slow without strength, without haste, without bark. It's pretty slow. So the 99 boss, I think, is the motivation for why this palm exists. And while it is fun on the floors, I would say it's more fun on the floors than on bosses. uh it's it makes bosses boring. Maze Root, um, Maze Root does so much. Maze Root is a sight. It is a witching, unreliable witching, at least in my experience. It is Serenity all in one. So it is crazy strong, and the only counter to it is the no incense enchantment. So what do I think is off with Maze Root? Um, I think a lot of people that are score runners really enjoy it and have a good time with it. But I feel like the fairy and getting the fairy to behave and aim its witching cone at the things you want in Shrubified, it's sometimes totally fine, and sometimes the fairy is just aiming it in all kinds of crazy directions, like somebody learning to like pee standing up for the first time. You know, it's just like, come on! I don't know where you're aiming that thing, Feoul. Where you putting that? Uh, where is the cone going to go? So I've had it happen so many times. I open a mimic and I hear the witching sound, and like I don't know what was hit. Some stuff in the room that isn't the mimic. Everything in the room except for the mimic. Like that drives me nuts. So, the unreliable nature of this incense is one of the issues that I have with it. Um, but I feel like it's just overcooked. I think it's way too strong. I think it does too much. I think it could do less. The fact that it insta opens the key is very funny because it can just let you leave. Like one of my runs, I just wanted to be done, and I was on 98 in a room next to the key, and I was just like, Maze Root, leave. Like that feels so underwhelming. Um, and on that note, poison fruit. Now, this might seem like strange placement considering I feel like this is overcooked, but I'm a Magicite fan. I like poison fruit. I don't think that all of the insects should be poison fruit. In fact, I think none of the insects should be poison fruit. But also, uh, I think these guys could use a little bit of rework because overall I like the demi clones in EO a bit better because I feel like they're not too much. I think Onion Knight is probably too much, but I like Doga. Doga doesn't instantly open the key. Doga does help you at bosses, but not to this level. This is like Onion Knight levels of damage. Une is great. Une I like way more than this because Une, you still have to fight the floor, you have to fight the monsters. Une is some damage, just like this is some damage, but Une doesn't have the drawback of being really unreliable. Um, like both of these fairies can heal you as well, just like Une can. Whereas like Doga doesn't. Doga doesn't heal you. I don't know. I guess in that sense I like the demi cleanse in EO a bit more than these guys. Although I do have fun just having a poison fruit around to deal with treasure rooms and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's that. I guess this is where I land with my palms. I think some of these are a little bit boring because of the design of this DD. I think some of these could use reworking based on, you know, how the deep dungeon is designed. Some of these are just fun. I'm sorry, poison fruit is just a fun button to hit, even though it is way too strong. And then some of these are just amazing. So that's how I feel about the palms. And enjoy your deep dungeon.